Imagine being the family member no one notices, always the afterthought, the extra chair at the table, the one expected to foot the bill without a second thought. Well, that's exactly how I've felt my entire life. But there's a moment when you finally stop playing along, when you decide that enough is enough. What happens when you stop being the family's ATM and start taking control? Let me show you how I turned years of manipulation and neglect into something they'd never forget. If you've ever felt like you were just the family placeholder, someone who only gets remembered when they're needed, hit that like button. Trust me, you're not alone. Don't forget to subscribe, because what happens next will show you how to take your power back and stop being used. Stay tuned for the full story. My name is Josh. I'm 32, and if you've ever felt like the family afterthought, the extra chair, the "oh right, he's here" relative, then you'll understand exactly how this story starts. Growing up, I never stood out. I wasn't the golden child who could do no wrong. I wasn't the troublemaker causing chaos for everyone. And I wasn't the baby that everyone fawned over either. No, I was the placeholder, the guy who showed up, smiled politely, and quietly picked up the check when it was time to pay. I didn't explode, I didn't argue, I just existed. And for some reason, that seemed to offend my family more than anything else. It wasn't always like that. I used to think we were a normal family dinners together, vacations, Christmas mornings, moments when I genuinely felt happy, when I felt like I belonged. But somewhere along the way, maybe after my dad left, or maybe after my older brother started making six figures, everything changed. My brother became the favorite, and from that point on, it was like I was erased from the picture. I stopped being part of the conversation and started becoming the background noise. I moved out when I was 19, put myself through school, and started working my way up the ranks at a mid-sized logistics firm. I made decent money enough to live comfortably, but you'd never know it from the way my family treated me. In fact, the better I did, the colder they became. It was like my success was something I wasn't allowed to have, or worse, something they thought they were entitled to benefit from without ever acknowledging the effort I'd put into building it. The most recent insult came wrapped in white linen napkins and a $600 bill. My cousin Melanie, my aunt's youngest daughter, was having an engagement dinner. Not a wedding, just an engagement dinner because, apparently, proposing with a ring that could be seen from space wasn't enough of a spectacle. My aunt, Linda, who has never said a kind word to me that wasn't about borrowing money, decided this was going to be a family-sponsored event, which, in our family, is code for Josh is paying for it. I found out I was invited, not from a call, not from a text, but from a forwarded email. No greeting, no hope you can make it, just the time, date, and location, along with a passive-aggressive line from my mom, "Don't be late." I stared at the screen for what felt like an eternity, debating if I even wanted to go. I hadn't seen most of them in over a year, and the last time I did, my mom introduced me to a friend as the one who's still single, still renting, and still doesn't visit enough. She said it like a joke, but it stung. I didn't laugh. Despite every part of me saying stay home, I went. I don't even know why. Maybe some small part of me still hoped they'd acknowledge me. Or maybe I just wanted to prove to myself that I was past caring what they thought. Either way, I found myself showing up at the restaurant, a place so upscale it was almost out of reach for most of the family, if they weren't pretending to be something they weren't. I arrived 15 minutes early, hoping to at least look like I belonged. I wore a navy blazer and pressed slacks. I tried my best to put on the appearance of someone who was part of the inner circle, but when I walked up to the hostess, I was handed a plastic wristband instead of a seat at the table. The hostess gave me a confused look when I told her my name, and then gestured toward a small corner near the back where a few silver trays sat under dim lighting. "You're with the Gomez party, right? You're on the kids list." Kids list? That stung, but I smiled politely, nodding as I walked into the room. The place was buzzing with chatter and clinking glasses. Long tables were set up in a U-shape, surrounding a floral centerpiece. Melanie and her fiancé were at the head of the U, posing for photos. And then, I spotted at the grown-up table, reserved for the inner circle of the family, my mom, my aunt, my brother, his wife, and a few extended cousins. They were all seated, all sipping champagne, all acting as though they owned the place. But my chair wasn't there. "Josh, over here!" My mom called, waving like she was hailing a cab. She gestured toward a fold-out table at the back, its legs uneven and wobbly, surrounded by teenagers and younger cousins. "You can sit with the kids. The grown-ups are at that table," she snapped, tossing me a plastic fork still wrapped in a thin napkin. I stared at the fork, feeling the weight of her words sink in. My Aunt Linda, who still owed me $2,000 from 2019, burst into laughter. "Just be glad we let you come this time," she said, her voice dripping with mockery. I didn't say anything. I just took my seat. The conversations at my table were about TikToks, college rejections, and who vaped behind the school gym. I sipped my water and nibbled on dry chicken that had clearly been sitting out too long. No one from the head table came by, not once. I was invisible. At some point, my brother raised a toast to Melanie and Jason. "May your love be as strong as your Instagram game," he said, and everyone laughed. I clapped once or twice out of politeness, but the urge to leave was overwhelming. Something inside me was screaming to just walk out, to leave the night behind and never look back. But I didn't. I stayed. As the night wore on, the event became less about celebrating Melanie and Jason's engagement and more about me sitting there, quietly. As the world moved around me, I was no longer part of the conversation, nor did I feel the need to try. I just watched them laugh, sip their drinks, and act as if they were living in a different reality, one where I didn't exist at all, except when it was convenient for them. The food was bad, the conversation was worse. No one from the head table came by to check on me or acknowledge my presence, not even when I raised my glass in a half-hearted toast. Trying to blend in, I wasn't even sure why I stayed. Some part of me told me that if I just stuck it out, maybe things would change. Maybe they'd see me, notice that I was there, and recognize that I was part of the family. But nothing changed. If anything, it got worse. The moment that truly made everything click when I fully understood how little I mattered to these people came when the event manager approached me with a clipboard. He was a tall, balding man, his face drawn and tired from what was clearly a long night of managing a room full of people pretending to be something they weren't. "Hey," he said, leaning down and speaking in a quiet tone. "Just confirming you're covering the $600 balance tonight, right?" I blinked. "What?" He flipped open the page on his clipboard. "This is the agreement. A $500 deposit's already been paid, and the remaining $600 is due by close. It's under your name." My stomach dropped. I stared at the paper. It felt like the world was spinning around me. I had never agreed to pay for this event. I had never been asked. But my name was on the bill, and apparently, I was the one who had to foot the rest of the cost. My hands started to tremble. "Who gave you my name?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Linda Gomez," he said flatly. "She said you were the one organizing the payment. She said it was your gift to the family." For a long moment, I couldn't speak. I just stared at him, trying to make sense of what he had just said. Linda? My Aunt Linda? The same aunt who had borrowed money from me in the past and never paid me back. The same aunt who had used me for years, never once bothering to acknowledge the help I provided. She had put my name on this bill without asking me, without even telling me. I didn't even feel anger at that moment. I just felt empty, numb. I looked toward the head table. My mom was laughing, swirling wine in her glass, my aunt patting her on the back. No one was paying attention to me. No one cared. I could feel my calm slipping away, but instead of exploding, I did the one thing they never expected. I smiled tightly, stood up slowly, and calmly pointed to the head table. "Ask the grown-ups," I said. The event manager stared at me for a beat, his expression shifting from confusion to realization. He didn't say anything, just nodded once and walked off. I straightened my blazer, fixing the sleeves, and then walked toward the exit. It was so easy, so deliberate. I didn't rush. I didn't storm out. I simply left. No one even noticed. As I stepped out into the cool night air, I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel anger. I just felt nothing. I walked to my car and sat there for a moment, the engine off. The windows cracked just enough to hear the bass thumping from inside the venue. Through the windshield, I could see the servers carrying trays of half-eaten cake, the last few people gathering around for photos, the DJ still pumping generic pop into the background. And I realized something in that moment. This was what family was supposed to be about: celebration, togetherness. But for me, it was always something else. A performance, a show. I was always the backdrop, the person who showed up but never belonged. I thought I should be angry. I thought I should feel this massive wave of betrayal crashing over me. But the truth was, I didn't feel much of anything at all. Just tired. Tired of playing along. Tired of swallowing my pride for people who saw me as a wallet, not a relative. My phone buzzed once. It was a message from my brother. "Nice of you to leave early. Mom says you're being dramatic again." I let out a dry laugh. Dramatic, right, as if being treated like a second-class citizen at a party I wasn't even properly invited to. Then being slapped with a $3,600 surprise bill was just part of the family fun. That's when something inside me finally clicked. It wasn't a snap. It was more like a quiet shift, a realization, a decision. I pulled up my banking app, my fingers moving without hesitation. I scrolled through the shared accounts I'd foolishly agreed to manage years ago. My mom's utilities were under my account because she was fixing her credit. My aunt's emergency dental surgery loan, I'd co-signed that. My brother's second honeymoon after blowing the budget on VIP upgrades. That was on my credit card. They always said they'd pay me back. They never did. This time, though, I wasn't going to let them use me anymore. I froze them, not out of spite, but out of clarity. One by one: electricity, gas, cable, mobile phones, everything. I turned it all off, canceled accounts, removed my name where I could, and in cases where I couldn't, I scheduled account closures. Then I opened a new bank account at a different branch and started transferring every dollar I had into it. The money was mine now. No one else could touch it. No one else could claim it. I was done. The fallout started the very next morning. The clock had barely struck 7:00 a.m. when my phone buzzed with an incoming text. It was from my mom. "Josh, the venue says the payment bounced. What's going on?" I read the message, feeling a strange sense of satisfaction mixed with exhaustion. She didn't even ask how I was doing. Didn't ask about the night or how I'd felt, just straight to the money, as if that was the only thing that mattered. It always had been. It wasn't family. It was just transactions. I didn't respond immediately. I knew what was coming. 7 minutes later, another message came in, this time from my mom. "Why are the lights not working? Did something happen with the electric bill?" I almost laughed. She was already noticing the cracks, the small things I had begun to take away, the things that had kept me tethered to their expectations. Then Aunt Linda's message came. "I'm being told my credit is frozen because of you. This is completely unfair." I wasn't surprised. My family had spent years abusing my trust and my finances. They had used me like an endless ATM, expecting me to pick up the tab whenever things went wrong. But I wasn't playing their game anymore. The text messages kept coming. "Why is your account frozen from my brother? You're causing so much drama." My aunt said, "The venue won't release Melanie's photos until the balance is paid. She's devastated." I read through the texts one by one. I could feel the anger starting to bubble up inside me, but it wasn't the kind of rage that used to take hold of me in the past. It was something else. It was calm, controlled, determined. I was done being the family's fallback. I pulled up my banking app again, scrolling through the accounts I had frozen, one by one. I checked off the boxes, removing my name from anything that I had been tied to. My mom's utilities, my aunt's loans, my brother's honeymoon bills gone. I turned off everything. The last vestige of their ability to rely on me was cut off. I could feel the weight lifting, but the more I did it, the more I realized how long I had been living under this cloud, this constant pressure to be the one who fixed everything. And for what? For a family that saw me as nothing more than a resource. My phone buzzed again, this time with a call from Melanie. I hadn't heard from her in days, and I honestly wasn't sure what to expect. "Josh," she said, her voice already shaky as though she knew she was calling at the worst possible time. "I'm really sorry about how you were treated. I didn't know they put your name down for the bill. It's just that the venue won't release the photos until we settle the balance. They say your name is on the account. Could you maybe just cover it, and we'll sort it out later?" I sat there for a moment, the weight of her words hanging in the air. She was apologizing, but I knew it wasn't genuine. It wasn't her fault. She had been raised in a family that thought money was the only way to show love, but I wasn't going to fix their mess anymore. "Mel," I said, my tone flat, "you posted 100 photos from that dinner, and I wasn't in a single one. Why would I cover it?" There was a long pause before she answered, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't mean to exclude you. I swear. It was my mom and Aunt Linda. They said you wouldn't mind because you have money. You're the one who always pays, right? They said it was your way of being included." I felt a sharp pang in my chest, but I held it together. I wasn't angry with her. I was angry with everything that led to this. I was tired of being the guy who was always included when it was convenient for them and excluded when it wasn't. I looked at the message from my brother that had come in earlier. It was typical trying to guilt-trip me into fixing everything. "Mom says you're being dramatic again," he'd written. Dramatic. That was what they always said. No matter how badly they treated me, no matter how many times they used me and disregarded my worth, I was the one being dramatic. It was their way of absolving themselves. I wasn't the problem. They were just entitled. The messages from my mom came in faster now. The guilt, the manipulation, everything came crashing down. "I raised you better than this," she wrote. "Don't punish everyone for one silly misunderstanding." Then came the kicker from Aunt Linda. "If you don't fix this, I'll tell everyone you committed fraud with my accounts." That did it. I took a deep breath and paused. For years, I had been the one to fix things, to bend to their whims. But now, I was done. I pulled out my phone and grabbed the documents I'd been saving. Everything I had signed on behalf of my family, those loans. The co-signed credit cards, the promises they had broken, every paper trail was there. I attached the screenshots and emails and sent them all to Aunt Linda, my mom, and for good measure, to my lawyer. I kept it simple. "Hi Mark, just making sure you're aware of the threats being made toward me in relation to shared financial accounts. Thank you." Then I sat back, watching the chaos unfold. The texts kept flooding in, the panic from my family rising. The first real message that stood out to me came from Clarissa, the event manager at the venue. She forwarded me an email from my aunt. It was desperate. "My card was declined 3 times. I need to put the remaining balance on my own card. Please help me out." It was almost poetic. The woman who had orchestrated everything, the one who had manipulated me for so long, was now begging for help, and I wasn't going to give it to her. I felt a strange peace as I read the email, the satisfaction of knowing that, for once, I was in control. In the aftermath, I blocked everyone. My mom, my brother, Aunt Linda. Each one of them had manipulated me for years, taking advantage of my kindness and my money without ever once stopping to ask if I was okay. And now, they would finally see what life without me looked like. The silence was deafening. No more calls, no more texts, just peace. But that peace was short-lived. The silence that followed was almost deafening. No more frantic calls or texts. No more guilt-tripping messages from my mom. No more manipulation from Aunt Linda or my brother. The only thing that remained was an eerie quiet, as if the entire family was waiting for me to crack and give in. But I didn't crack. I didn't give in. For the first time in my life, I felt a sense of peace that I hadn't known I'd been craving for years. But that peace was short-lived. It was 3 days after I sent the final emails, the ones that sealed my decision to cut them all off, when I heard the knock on my door. I'd been sitting in my living room, sipping coffee, scrolling through my phone. The morning light was dim, and everything felt calm, as if the weight of the world had been lifted off my shoulders. It was almost surreal. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to explain myself, like I wasn't constantly looking over my shoulder, waiting for someone to ask for something. But then came the knock. I wasn't expecting anyone. I hadn't heard from my family in days, and I assumed they were too embarrassed, too ashamed to contact me. But as I glanced through the peephole, I saw her, my mom, red-faced, eyes puffy, holding an envelope. Something in me wanted to close the door and walk away. I didn't owe her an explanation, not after everything she'd done to me, but part of me, the part that still wanted things to be different, hesitated. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the door. Maybe, just maybe, this would be the moment she would apologize. Maybe this would be the time she'd finally admit how wrong she was, how she had taken me for granted all these years. I could already imagine the words she might say. I'm sorry, Josh. I never realized what I was doing. We've been so wrong, and I've hurt you in ways I didn't understand. But when I opened the door, I saw the truth. She wasn't here for reconciliation. She wasn't here to make amends. She was here for damage control. Josh, she said, giving me a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes, can we talk? Her voice was already thin, as if she was walking on eggshells, trying to manipulate the situation in her favor. She held out the envelope like it was some kind of peace offering. I didn't say anything. I just stepped aside and let her walk in. She moved through my apartment like she owned it, like she had every right to be there. Even though she hadn't visited once since I bought it 3 years ago, she perched herself on the edge of my couch, as if trying to claim a seat at the table she no longer had a place at. The irony was thick. She handed me the envelope. I opened it without a word, expecting to find a handwritten note or maybe even a check, some last-ditch effort to smooth things over. But inside, it was an invoice from the event venue, unpaid balance, $3,600 plus a $400 late fee. I looked at her, the words swirling in my head, but I stayed silent. She cleared her throat, clasping her hands in front of her like she was about to give a sermon. Then came the carefully rehearsed sigh. I know things got tense, she began, but this has gone too far. We're family, Josh, and families don't punish each other like this. I leaned back against the wall, crossing my arms. I felt like I was watching a play. Her performance was so predictable. It was the same old script: guilt, manipulation, and the usual. We're family. You're supposed to help us. But I wasn't buying it anymore. You tossed me a plastic fork and told me to sit with the kids, I said, my voice calm but steady. You made me pay for your gas bill last month without asking. You put my name on a bill for a dinner I never agreed to host. That's not a joke. That's using someone. Her eyes widened, but instead of apologizing, she tried to shift the blame. It's not like you can't afford it, she said, her tone dismissive. You don't have a wife or kids, so what's the big deal? There it was. That sentence, the one that always made me feel like my value was tied to how much money I made. I'd heard it before, so many times. You're fine, you have money, you're not like us. I could feel the anger rising, but I kept it in check. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to explain myself anymore. I knew the game she was playing. She was trying to make me feel guilty for not being the one to step in and fix everything. I took a deep breath, and then I did something that shocked even me. I reached down, grabbed the invoice from the envelope, and slowly ripped it in half. Not out of anger, but out of control, calm, deliberate, controlled. Her mouth fell open, her eyes going wide with disbelief. Josh, I'm not your wallet, I said, my voice low but unwavering. I'm not your safety net, I'm not your scapegoat, I'm your son, but I don't think you've seen me that way in years. She scoffed, her voice dripping with venom. So what, you're cutting us all off over a party? I shook my head. Not over a party, over a pattern of using me, manipulating me, taking everything I had without ever once considering what it was doing to me. I'm done. This is where it ends. She froze, like she didn't know how to respond. Then, she reached for the familiar script, the one she had used when I was a teenager and didn't want to lend her my paycheck for groceries. You think you're so perfect. Huh, she spat. You think money makes you better than the rest of us? You're just bitter. You've always been bitter. I nodded slowly. Maybe, but I'm not broke, and I'm not begging my son to fix a mess I created. That one landed hard. She stepped back, blinking too fast, her breath shallow. She didn't know how to process it. She wasn't used to me standing up for myself. The tension in the room was palpable. She opened her mouth again, probably to say something sharp, something designed to cut. But when she saw the look in my eyes, the same one I had worn through this entire ordeal, she stopped. Without another word, she left. That was 3 days ago. Since then, the silence has been deafening. There have been no more group texts, no passive-aggressive messages from my mom or Aunt Linda, just stillness. I haven't heard from my brother, or my aunt, or Melanie. I imagine they're scrambling to figure out how to pay the bill. Or maybe they're too embarrassed. Maybe, just maybe, they're finally starting to understand that I'm not their backup plan anymore. But then, just when I thought it was over, when I thought I could finally breathe freely, I received a message. It had been 3 days since my mother left my apartment. The day I finally stood up for myself, the silence between us was almost deafening. And at first, it felt like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. The constant guilt-tripping calls, the demands, and the manipulations from my family, all of it stopped the moment I severed the financial ties. But even though the peace was overwhelming, it didn't last long. 3 days of calm, 3 days of silence, and then my phone buzzed again. It was a text from an unknown number. "Josh, it's Jason, Melanie's fiancé. I think we need to talk." I stared at the screen for a moment. Jason, my brother-in-law-to-be. I hadn't spoken to him much in the past. He had always been somewhat of a background figure, quiet, almost detached from the chaos of the family. To hear from him now, after everything that had happened, threw me off. Part of me felt like whatever he had to say would just be more excuses, deflections, and half apologies. But another part of me, the part that had been sitting at the kids' table for years, ignored and used, wanted to hear what he had to say. I had been searching for answers for so long. Maybe Jason could provide them. Maybe he was the one who could break through the family's defense mechanisms and show me that someone in this tangled mess still cared. I hesitated for a moment, weighing my options. The cynic in me wanted to dismiss him right away, but curiosity got the better of me. I couldn't just move on without hearing him out. I texted him back, coffee tomorrow, neutral ground, public place, no drama. The next day, I arrived at a small coffee shop in the middle of the city. I got there early, hoping for some quiet time to think. It had been a whirlwind of emotions lately, and I wanted to make sure I wasn't blindsided again. The family drama, the emotional manipulation, the financial chaos, it was exhausting. I didn't need more of it, but here I was, waiting to hear what Jason had to say. I spotted him when he walked in. He was wearing a clean button-down shirt and jeans, looking more serious than I had ever seen him. He wasn't the type to draw attention, but today he seemed almost nervous. His shoulders were tense. His hands gripped his coffee cup like it was the only thing anchoring him to the ground. He walked up to the table, and I gestured for him to sit. He did so without saying anything right away, clearly unsure of where to begin. I didn't say anything either. I wasn't sure if I wanted to hear an apology or if I was just bracing myself for more of the same. "Thanks for meeting me," he said, his voice quiet but steady. I nodded. "What's going on, Jason?" He seemed to struggle with the right words, then finally leaned in, his eyes darting around to make sure no one else could hear. "I just need to say something. I didn't know. I didn't know what they were doing to you." I stayed silent, waiting for him to continue. "When Melanie first told me about the engagement party, I thought your name was on the invoice because you offered," he said, his words coming out in a rush. "She told me you were covering it as a surprise gift for the family. That's what your mom and Aunt Linda said, too. I didn't question it." His words hit me like a punch to the stomach, the confirmation that they had all lied about me, manipulated me, made me the scapegoat for their behavior, but I didn't let my emotions show. I just nodded, encouraging him to keep going. After the party, when everything blew up, I started looking through the emails. Jason continued, I saw the invoice changes, the name edits, the part where your aunt forwarded your contact info to the venue without your permission. I felt my jaw tighten. I had suspected it, but hearing it confirmed, feeling the betrayal roll over me again made my chest tighten. My suspicions weren't just gut feelings, they were facts. They had deliberately set me up. They had used me, and I had let it happen for far too long. Jason paused, looking at me with a mixture of guilt and frustration. I confronted Melanie about it. She broke down crying. She said she didn't want to ask you to pay for it, but her mom told her you wouldn't mind that you had the money, that it was your way of being included. I clenched my fists under the table and Melanie tried to believe it, Jason said, his voice faltering, but when she saw you sitting at the kids' table, she knew she was wrong. She knew you still weren't really included. I stared at him, not knowing what to say. It felt like everything I'd suspected had finally come to light. My family had used me, and they hadn't even bothered to make it seem like they cared. They had humiliated me, ignored me, and then tried to paint me as the bad guy when I finally said enough was enough. That's when I realized, Jason continued, his voice now lower, almost ashamed. I don't want to marry into this. I don't want this mess to be part of my life. I can't be part of a family that treats people like that. That caught me off guard. I leaned back in my chair, taking a deep breath. What do you mean? Jason looked down at his coffee, his eyes downcast. I called off the engagement yesterday. My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't expected that. Jason had always seemed like the calm, detached one, never getting involved in the family drama. But now he was telling me he had walked away from Melanie because of the way the family had treated me. Melanie's devastated, he said, his voice tight with emotion. But I told her, if she couldn't see what was wrong with her family until it exploded, then we had bigger problems than a party. I sat there, processing what he had just said. My brother-in-law-to-be had ended his engagement because of the way my family had treated me. That moment, his decision to walk away felt like something I had needed to hear for a long time. For the first time in years, someone outside my immediate family had seen me, really seen me, and that made all the difference. Jason exhaled slowly. I'm not here to ask you for anything. Josh, I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I saw it all. You weren't crazy. You weren't being dramatic, you were being used. I exhaled deeply, the weight lifting off my chest. For the first time in years, someone had acknowledged my pain. Someone had validated what I had been feeling for so long. Thank you, I said simply, the words feeling strange, almost foreign, coming from my mouth. Jason nodded. I don't expect things to be okay between us, but I just wanted you to know that I saw it, and I get it. We didn't speak much after that. He left quietly, his footsteps soft as he walked out of the coffee shop. As I watched him go, I couldn't help but feel like something had shifted. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of closure, a sense of vindication. I hadn't just cut ties with my family, I had finally stopped being invisible. That night, my phone buzzed with another text. This time it was from my mom. Are you happy now you ruined Melanie's life? You embarrassed us. My brother, you seriously need help. No wonder you're alone. I stared at the message for a long time. I wasn't sure why, but I didn't feel guilty anymore. For once, I felt free. I typed my response slowly, without hesitation. Good. Then I blocked her. In the days that followed, everything changed. The silence became louder. My phone stayed quiet. No calls, no messages, no guilt trips. For once, I was left alone with my thoughts. No one was asking me to fix their mistakes. No one was demanding money, time, or energy from me, and it felt liberating. The real shift happened when I started taking my life back. I spent more time with friends, real friends, the ones who asked how I was doing, who genuinely cared. I started picking up old hobbies again: photography, hiking, cooking. I volunteered at a local shelter, helping with donation drives, and for the first time, I was doing something purely for others without expecting anything in return. One Sunday, I received a letter in the mail, no return address, but the handwriting was familiar. It was from my grandmother, the only person in the family who had always treated me with respect. She had missed the engagement party because of health issues, but she had heard about what happened. Her letter was short. Josh, heard about the party, heard what you did, good. You deserved better than them. Always have. Come visit me, I made your favorite cookies. Love, Grandma. I laughed right there in the driveway, my heart lighter than it had been in years. That night, I drove to her house, smiling for the first time in ages. No plastic forks, no kiddie tables, no bills I didn't agree to, just me, on my terms, paying for a tank of gas with my own money. Story 2. My name is Kaylin Wren. I'm 35 years old, and I'm the director of operations at one of the most respected tech companies in Boston. On paper, my life looks enviable, successful, stable, and steadily climbing the career ladder. Yet, a few weeks ago, I found myself standing outside a rented lakeside venue, clutching a gift in both hands, feeling like a child desperately seeking approval. It was my mother's 65th birthday. I wasn't invited. And that wasn't a casual oversight, it was deliberate. My father, Robert Wren, stood at the door like a bouncer at an exclusive club, clipboard in hand. His eyes were cold, dismissive. You're not on the list, he said, not even bothering to lower his voice. Behind him, my older sister, Juliet, stood with a smirk that stung deeper than any insult could. She didn't need to say anything. Her gaze said it all. And just like that, years of quiet tolerance cracked open under the weight of one public rejection. I had flown across the country for this moment. I'd spent thousands on a gift, an emerald brooch. I'd spent months searching for one that was nearly identical to the one my mother had lost when I was 10. I practiced every possible scenario in front of my bathroom mirror. None of it prepared me for being turned away like a stranger. But as life often does, it has a strange way of rearranging the pieces. Just minutes later, someone stepped out from the crowd. Juliet's boyfriend, Damien, who had been smiling and chatting with other guests, walked toward me, looking uncomfortable. He said something that silenced the room and changed everything. She's my boss. In that moment, everything they thought they knew about me started to unravel. My father's face dropped, Juliet's smile faltered, and for the first time, I didn't have to speak to reveal the truth. They saw it in my eyes, in the way I carried myself. For years, I believed I was loved in the way all children should be, but I learned that love in our house wasn't unconditional. It was a currency measured in achievements, in who stayed close enough to be seen. My sister Juliet, the golden child, perfect grades, perfect hair, perfect everything, was the star. Nolan, the baby boy, could do no wrong, and me, I was the reliable middle child, the one who was easily forgotten in family photos. Growing up in a suburb just outside of Milwaukee, I watched Juliet stand center stage in every family moment. With her trophies and accolades, I was often just off to the side, half-shadowed, half-cropped. Even at family gatherings, my place was peripheral, like I didn't matter as much. My mother used to say, "Kaylin, you don't need to shine like them. You're your own kind of light." I clung to that for years. But the cracks began to show early. At 10 years old, I made it to the regional spelling bee. I came in fourth. Juliet had taken first. When I showed my parents the certificate, my father barely looked up from his paper. "Good effort," he muttered before returning to his work. My mother tucked it into the corner of the fridge. Next to Juliet's National Science Fair photo, I noticed that a week later, my certificate was gone. At 16, when my prom date canceled the night before, my mother took me out for dinner instead, just the two of us. She wore lipstick and heels and told the waiter it was a special celebration. That night, I felt seen, not compared, not overlooked, just seen. But these moments grew rarer as I got older. While Juliet stayed close to home, following my father into the family real estate firm, I left for California on a scholarship to study computer engineering. "So far," my dad remarked when I told him, "afraid to compete with your sister?" Distance became my survival. College turned into a career. a career I built from the ground up. I climbed through Silicon Valley startups, moved to Boston, and by 32 I was leading operations at Sonera Systems, overseeing more people than my father ever had at family gatherings. And what did I get from them? Not pride, not congratulations, just polite confusion. Still working on computers, Dad would ask, like it was a phase. You ever think about settling down? You're not getting any younger. Callan. Meanwhile, Juliet, still unmarried, still childless, was treated like the domestic goddess, the one who made banana bread and updated Mom's medicine organizer, while I spent my time flying around the world making deals. 3 Thanksgivings ago, after a few too many glasses of wine, Juliet leaned over the table and muttered, "You always think you're better than us, don't you?" Her voice was sweet, but the poison was there, too. You build your empire, send gifts, like that's supposed to make up for not being here. I call, I visit, I try, I said, keeping my voice level. You perform? She snapped, we live the hard parts of this family. You show up for the photo ops. That stuck with me, and the worst part, I think she believed it. After that, Mom's calls slowed, and Dad's tone grew colder. Every time I tried to reconnect, the distance between us seemed to harden, like something solid and impenetrable. It all built up to that birthday party, the door, the list I wasn't on. Years of quiet rejection finally boiled over into a truth I could no longer ignore in their eyes. I had left, and by leaving, I had betrayed them. The year before my mother's birthday, I missed Thanksgiving. I had a legitimate reason. A crisis with our Southeast Asia division meant I had to be on a plane to Singapore the night before. I called home, sent a bottle of wine, even had flowers delivered with a note handwritten by me. But when I spoke to Mom 2 days later, her voice was clipped. "We managed just fine without you," she said. It wasn't the words that hurt, it was the hollowness behind them, that empty space where warmth used to be. Juliet didn't let it rest either. A week later, I got a message from her. "Hope your big international deal was worth missing the only day Mom really looks forward to all year." It was never just about missing a meal. It was about confirming a narrative I hadn't agreed to, a narrative where I was the daughter who had abandoned the family, a role I hadn't auditioned for, but somehow got cast in. After that, everything felt more distant. Texts from Nolan became one-word replies. Mom's calls became sporadic, and when she did call, Juliet's voice could often be heard faintly in the background, directing the conversation like a stage manager. Then came the moment that turned suspicion into certainty. It was a Thursday night. I was working late, wrapping up quarterly projections. When I opened Facebook for a quick mental break, a banner image caught my eye. Patricia Wren celebrating 65 beautiful years. The event page was public. The guest list included old family friends, distant cousins, even Mom's college roommate from Minnesota. But not me. I stared at the RSVP list for a long time, wondering if it was an oversight. I scrolled again, checked the list one more time. No, it wasn't missing. It had been deliberately excluded. I didn't call right away. I sat with that knowledge for a full 24 hours, unsure whether to scream or go silent. Finally, I picked up the phone and called Mom. "Callan," she answered, surprised. "Is everything all right?" "I saw something online," I said, keeping my voice even. "About your birthday party. I didn't know." "Oh," she hesitated, clearly caught off guard. "I thought Juliet said you were too busy expansion. The travel. She said you'd already declined." I felt the sting, but I kept it together. I never declined. "Mom, no one invited me." Another long pause. "Well," she said, her tone softer, less certain. "If you'd like to come, of course you should." It wasn't enthusiastic, but it was enough. I booked a first-class ticket. I boarded my flight with a knot in my stomach. There were so many things left unsaid, so many feelings I wasn't sure how to process. My mother's offer to let me come wasn't some grand gesture of reconciliation. It was a half-hearted afterthought. Still, I packed my bags, bought the perfect gift, and told myself I was doing this for me, not them. I arrived early at the lakeside venue, my heart racing with each step I took up the stone path. It was exactly what I imagined, sunlight spilling through wide windows, the gentle waves lapping at the dock, a picture-perfect setting, just like Mom always loved. But as I walked closer to the entrance, the weight of what I was about to face pressed down on me. I was still carrying the gift, an emerald brooch, almost identical to the one my mother had lost decades ago. I remembered it clearly from when I was 10. I had seen her eyes light up when she opened Grandma's jewelry box and found it tucked inside. "This is my favorite," she had said. It had taken me months to find a replacement that was nearly identical. It was my way of showing her I still remembered what mattered to her. I had spent hours on the phone with jewelers, scouring antique shops, searching for the perfect piece. But none of that preparation could make me ready for what came next. I saw my father standing at the door, clipboard in hand. His jaw was tight, his eyes cold. He looked every bit the gatekeeper. When he saw me, his face tightened further. "Callan," he said flatly, "what are you doing here?" I swallowed the lump in my throat, keeping my voice steady. "I'm here for Mom." He didn't even glance at me for a second before he replied, his tone dismissive. "You're not on the guest list." I didn't even flinch at the words. It wasn't new. What hurt was the lack of hesitation in his voice, the ease with which he told me I didn't belong. Behind him, I saw Juliet, my older sister. She stood there with a smirk on her face, arms crossed, clearly enjoying the show. My mind was racing, my chest tight, but I refused to let it show. I was told I could come. I said, my voice even. He looked down at his clipboard, finger sliding down a list. "You're not on it." "I wasn't invited," I said, my heart sinking, "but I was told this party was for people who show up." "You're not family anymore, Callan," he snapped, the words cold and final. "People who make time for family." I froze. It wasn't a shout, it wasn't even cruel. It was just dismissive. It was practiced. Behind him, the guests began to notice. A few glanced away quickly, while others whispered, "Is that Callan?" I heard one of them murmur. "I thought she didn't speak to the family anymore." My face flushed, blood rushing to my head. I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears. I had to look away, not wanting to give them the satisfaction of seeing me crumble, but I couldn't leave, not like this. And then, Juliet stepped forward, as if she were the queen of the event, her smile sugary, eyes sharp as a blade. "Oh, Callan," she said, the words dripping with condescension. "I thought we'd agreed after what happened last Thanksgiving." "We didn't agree to anything," I said, my voice rising. "I never said that." "Oh, well, I mean, you told Mom you couldn't come," Juliet said, her tone dismissive. "I assumed that meant—" She trailed off, glancing at my father for validation. Her words stung, but I refused to back down. "I never said that." "She probably just got confused," Juliet added lightly. "She's been forgetful lately." I could see the pleasure in her eyes, the victory in her stance. She had orchestrated this. It wasn't about family, it was about control, and she was determined to make me the villain. "I just want to give Mom her gift," I said, trying to keep the situation from escalating further. "Then I'll leave." "Callan, let's not make a scene," my father warned, his tone low. But before I could respond, I heard a voice from behind them. "Excuse me, Callan," Damien said, Juliet's boyfriend. He was the one person I didn't expect to step in. I had seen him in pictures, always smiling at Juliet's side, but now, in person. He looked different, uncomfortable, torn between two worlds. He adjusted his tie nervously and stepped forward. "I think there's something everyone should know," he said, his voice clear and firm. Juliet's eyes narrowed. "Damien, don't!" But Damien didn't stop. "She's not just Juliet's sister," he said, his gaze sweeping across the gathering crowd. "She's also my boss at Sonera Systems in Boston." The room fell silent. A few people gasped. My father blinked, caught off guard. Juliet's face drained of color. She wasn't prepared for this. Not for Damien to break the carefully curated narrative she had spun about me. I didn't speak. I didn't have to. The truth had been spoken, not by me, but by someone they couldn't dismiss. For once, I didn't need to fight. I handed the gift to my father without breaking eye contact. "Tell Mom I wish her a happy birthday," I said, "and I hope she enjoys this." Then, I turned and walked away, my heels steady on the gravel, spine straight. I didn't cry. Not yet. That would come later, alone in the rental car where my hands trembled too hard to start the ignition. But in that moment, I felt something rise in me, not shame, not regret, clarity. I had every intention of leaving, but Damien didn't let me. He followed me to the car, hesitated for a moment, and then knocked on the window. When I rolled it down, his voice was quiet, but firm. "I need to say something." He slid into the passenger seat when I unlocked the door, looking at me like he finally understood something. "What they did wasn't spur of the moment," he said, his words slow, measured. "At the rehearsal dinner last night, Juliet and your dad talked about what to say if you showed up. Your mom wasn't part of that. She had no idea." My breath caught. Damien continued, "Juliet told her you'd already sent regrets that you were too busy. She's been rewriting you for years. She talks about you constantly, always with bitterness. But I started piecing things together. The way you lead at work, it didn't match who she said you were." I stared out at the lake, my heart heavy. The pain was still there, but something inside me shifted. "That's when I knew," Damien continued. "I couldn't let the lie win." I turned the ignition, my hands steady now. "I'm going back in," I said, gripping the door handle. "They want a confrontation, they'll get one, but it'll be the kind they're not used to: truthful, direct, and public." Inside, the party buzzed with conversations, laughter, but as soon as Damien stepped forward, everything froze. "I'd like to introduce my boss and Juliet's sister, Kaylin Wren," he said, his voice loud enough to carry through the room. Mom's eyes widened. She stood up, startled. "You came," she whispered. Juliet stormed over, her face flushed with fury. "What are you doing?" she hissed. "The right thing," Damien said, his voice calm, unwavering. I turned to my father. "You told me I wasn't family, but here I am. So let's make things clear." I turned to my mother. "Did you really think I didn't want to come?" She hesitated. "Juliet said you couldn't." "I never said that," I said, my voice steady. "I told you I'd be here." Juliet snapped. "She left us. She always leaves, and you light up more when she calls than when I'm sitting right in front of you." The room fell silent. I stepped forward, calm but unwavering. "I didn't leave. I built a life. I tried to share it with all of you, but somewhere along the way, you decided it didn't count because I wasn't physically here." I turned to my mother. "You used to see me. I need you to see me again as I am now, not as the version they told you to believe." Tears filled her eyes. "I do," she whispered. "I'm sorry, I never wanted this." Dad looked away, ashamed. Juliet stood frozen, her perfect facade cracking. It's strange how something that has been broken for so long can suddenly feel whole again. There was no immediate relief after that moment in the lakeside venue. No big epiphany. No sudden family reunion. What happened that day wasn't a magical fix. It was the beginning of something new, something unspoken, something earned. The next few days were a blur. I stayed at the venue until the party finally resumed. The tension simmering but subdued. Damien, always the gentleman, made sure I didn't feel like an outsider. His presence felt like a shield against the years of rejection I'd been carrying. We didn't talk much after the confrontation, but there was comfort in his quiet support. He understood me better than my own family did, and I realized in that moment that I didn't need to explain everything to him. He just got it. I left the venue early that evening, my mind racing with what had happened, what I'd said, and what was still left unsaid. The ride back to the rental house was long, filled with that same heavy silence I had felt for years when I was around my family. My phone buzzed in my lap, but I ignored it. This time, I didn't need to keep checking for validation. When I got back to the rental, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat down by the window, staring out at the lake. It was peaceful here. Too peaceful. The kind of peace you can only find when you're alone with your thoughts. I'd never realized how much I craved solitude until now. The phone call came the next morning. I didn't expect an apology, but I also didn't expect the tone of my mother's voice. "Kaylin," she started, her voice cracking slightly. "I'm sorry, I should have been better. I should have listened to you." I almost didn't recognize her. This wasn't the woman who'd told me I wasn't invited or dismissed my efforts to reach out. This was different, vulnerable. "Mom," I said, my voice steady but softer than I intended. "I don't need an apology. I just need you to see me, to really see me." "I do see you," she replied, her voice filled with regret, "but I've been blind for so long, and I've let everyone else control the narrative about you. I don't want to do that anymore." It was the first time in years I felt like my mother was speaking to me as an equal, not just the daughter who had left and was easy to overlook. "You can't change the past." "Mom," I said, "but you can start now. Start by listening, by not letting them write my story for me." There was a pause on the other end. Then she said, "You're right. I want to hear your story. Kaylin, all of it, and I want to be part of it." That was the first step. The weeks that followed were both slow and fast. We started rebuilding not everything, not right away, but enough. Phone calls became more frequent, not long and drawn out, but real. Mom told me about her garden, about the new flowers she was planting. I told her about my work, about the projects I was leading at Sonera. No guilt, no silence, just us, talking, as equals. It felt like a slow thaw, like the walls between us were starting to crack. One night, after we had gotten off the phone, I sat at my desk and stared at my computer screen. I'd made so many plans, so many ways to keep moving forward, to keep building my career, my life. Without them, I had grown used to the silence between us. But now, with every conversation, it was becoming clearer. I wasn't just rebuilding a relationship. I was reclaiming my place in the family, not the one they had written for me, but the one I was creating for myself. But there was still one piece of the puzzle that hadn't been solved: Juliet. 2 months passed before Juliet reached out to me. I wasn't expecting a text or a call, but when I saw her name on my screen, I hesitated before answering. "Hey," she said, her voice tentative. "I've been thinking about everything. I've been talking to someone, a therapist, and I think I was wrong about a lot of things." I didn't say anything at first. Her voice wasn't defensive. It wasn't bitter. It was different. She wasn't trying to make excuses or justify her actions. She was simply acknowledging them. "I think it's a good thing," I replied, my voice steady, "that you're talking to someone." She was quiet for a moment. "I'm sorry, Kaylin," she said softly. "I've been holding on to so much anger, and I didn't know how to let it go. I didn't know how to let you back in." I felt a tightness in my chest, but it wasn't anger. It was something else, something I hadn't felt for her in years. I never wanted to leave, Juliet, but I couldn't stay and be the person you wanted me to be. I had to build my own life. She exhaled slowly. "I get that, and I'm sorry it took me so long to understand." For the first time, I felt like we were speaking the same language, not just as sisters, but as adults, each with our own lives, our own struggles. We had both been living in separate worlds for so long, but now we were starting to find a way to reconnect. "I think we can rebuild this," I said, my voice quiet but certain. "I hope so," Juliet replied. "I really do." A few weeks later, Mom called me with some unexpected news. "I'm coming to Boston," she said, her voice excited. "I want to visit you, just the two of us." My heart swelled with something I couldn't quite place. This wasn't just about a visit. It was about her showing up, about her wanting to be part of my life in a way she never had before. "I'd love that, Mom," I said, the words coming out easier than I expected. "I'll take time off work. We can do whatever you want." When she arrived, It was nothing like the family gatherings I had grown up with. No tension, no unspoken resentments, just the two of us, walking through my life in Boston. I showed her my apartment, my office, and the corner cafe where the barista knew my name. She met my team, listened as people spoke of me with respect, not as the distant daughter, but as the leader I had become. It was the most genuine connection we'd had in years. "I'm proud of you. Kaylin," she said as we walked along the harbor, "I see you. I really see you now." And for the first time, I felt like she wasn't just talking about my accomplishments. She was talking about me, the real me, not the version they had tried to suppress. A few months later, Thanksgiving came around. I decided to host it in my Boston apartment. It wasn't about proving anything. It was about starting a new tradition, one where I was no longer on the sidelines. Mom came. Dad came. Even Nolan showed up with his new girlfriend. Juliet didn't come, but she sent a card. Inside it said, "Maybe next year." And somehow, that meant more than I expected. As we sat around the table, the conversation was easy. There was no mention of the past, no silent accusations, just the quiet comfort of presence. Before dinner, Mom raised her glass. "To Kaylin," she said, looking at me with pride, "for bringing us together. Not just in this room, but in truth." Dad added quietly, "I'm proud of you, for who you are, not just what you've done." It wasn't a perfect night. Nothing ever is, but it was honest. It was ours. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had a place not earned through success or sacrificed peace, but chosen, claimed, respected. Healing doesn't always come in grand gestures. Sometimes it starts with a scarf, a phone call, or a seat at the table, and this time, no one could take it away. Story 3. My name is Bella Vale, and I am 30 years old. I've spent most of my life being the quiet one, the reliable daughter, the one who never caused a scene, who always did what was expected. But life, as it often does, has a way of shattering expectations, and I found out just how fragile those bonds really were. I never wanted to be the center of attention. That was Celeste's job. She was always 2 steps ahead. Dazzling, impossible to compete with. Growing up, she was the golden child. Everything she did was perfection, and even her mistakes seemed to get swept under the rug. Meanwhile, I was the invisible one, the one who stayed late, cleaning up after everyone else, fixing whatever needed to be fixed. I didn't mind. It was what I did. I didn't ask for recognition, just space to be who I was. But that space, it turns out, wasn't enough. When I found out about the affair, it wasn't about sex or betrayal. It wasn't even about Celeste or Jasper. It was about how they saw me. It was about how my entire existence had been treated like an afterthought. I wasn't the one they leaned on when they needed help. I wasn't the one they celebrated. No, I was the one they used when it was convenient, the one who never caused trouble. And when the truth about Jasper and Celeste's affair came to light, it wasn't just an affair, it was a betrayal so deep, so calculated, that it took every ounce of restraint for me not to lose it completely. But I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I smiled and I started planning. Celeste had always been the star, the one who got all the attention. She could lie through her teeth, and our parents would still think she was just misunderstood. I was the one who quietly accepted my place. I never demanded anything. I never asked for recognition. I thought it was enough just to be a part of the family, but it never was. When I was 10, I made it to the regional spelling bee and came in 4th place. Celeste had won first. When I showed my parents my certificate, my father barely glanced at it. My mother smiled and said, "That's nice. Honey, but did you hear Celeste got asked to the spring formal by the quarterback? Isn't that exciting?" In high school, I made varsity swim team as a freshman. Big deal. Huge, actually. But the same week, Celeste got the lead in the school play. Guess who got the flowers and the standing ovation? Not me. I remember sitting in the back seat after a meet, holding my first place medal, and my dad turning to ask me if I could drop Celeste off at rehearsal. I said yes. I always said yes. And even as an adult, nothing changed. When Celeste bought her first house, My parents paid for her down payment and closing costs. When my car broke down during a snowstorm, Mom told me, maybe you should learn to budget better, like a blown transmission was some kind of moral failure. But I didn't hate Celeste. I accepted it. Some people got the applause, and some got the cleanup duty. It wasn't until that random Tuesday afternoon that the illusion shattered. I had stopped by my parents' house to drop off some paperwork insurance forms that my mom couldn't figure out. I walked in without knocking. That's how it always was. They were in the living room, and I caught Celeste's voice first. It sent a jolt through me. Bella can't find out about me and Jasper. The words didn't make sense at first. My husband's name, my sister's voice. I froze. Mom's response was casual, almost bored. Don't worry, sweetie, she won't. It's better this way. You've got too much to lose. And then, my dad chimed in, yeah, let's not ruin your life over one mistake. I backed out of the house so slowly that I could barely feel my feet. I didn't slam a door. I didn't make a sound. I just walked back to my car and sat there, trying to breathe. I had heard everything, but I couldn't process it yet. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I stayed silent. But deep down, something was shifting inside me. Something cold and sharp. When I got home, Jasper was sitting on the couch, watching a game and sipping beer like everything was normal, like my world hadn't just been cracked open. I couldn't even look at him. I locked myself in the bathroom and slid to the floor, my back against the door. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I stayed silent because something much deeper than rage was taking root inside me. This wasn't just about an affair. It was about betrayal layered, deliberate, and unspoken. It was about how they saw me, how they thought I would just accept it. They didn't know me at all, but they were about to. I spent the night in a calm haze, letting the shock fade. The rage wasn't fiery. It was cold, controlled, surgical. I wasn't going to storm into rooms screaming. That's what they expected, what they were prepared for. I'd do what I always did, stay calm, stay invisible, and collect everything they never saw coming. That night, Jasper fell asleep beside me, like nothing had happened. His chest rose and fell in that steady rhythm I used to find comforting. Now it made my skin crawl. I slipped out of bed and grabbed his phone. No passcode. How poetic. He trusted me enough not to hide the blade he had stabbed me with. There it was, a folder named Receipts. It might as well have been labeled evidence. Inside were selfies with Celeste, innocent at first glance, but when you looked closer, you could see the intimacy in her smile, the familiarity in their posture, and then came the others. One in particular stood out: Celeste in a hotel bathrobe, Jasper behind her in nothing but a towel, both of them grinning like teenagers on a field trip. I should have felt sick, but I didn't. I felt focused. I saved every file to my phone, then to a hidden Google Drive. I emailed a copy to myself with the subject line, Truth. Next, I dug into their messages, dozens of texts, flirty banter, emojis, inside jokes. My favorite was Celeste sending Jasper a picture of a baby onesie with the caption, "Think Nate will like this." Jasper replied, "Not half as much as I like what's underneath it." They weren't hiding anymore. Not really. They were flaunting it, laughing about it, mocking me, mocking Nate, playing house while spitting on our marriages. I kept digging. Jasper's email inbox wasn't cleaned out, thankfully. I found hotel booking confirmations, one marked for 2, an anniversary suite. The dates lined up with weekends when I thought he was on business trips, and Celeste claimed she was at yoga retreats. Next, I turned my attention to her. Celeste had always been performative online. Filtered selfies, matcha lattes, captions like self-care Sunday and brunch with the besties. But when you looked closer, there were clues. A photo at a cafe with 2 drinks, but only her visible. A mirror selfie in a hotel bathroom with a man's jacket just barely in frame. A weekend getaway post with no tagged friends. No Nate. She wasn't even being careful. That was the insult. They all thought I was too stupid to notice, too soft to ask questions, too loyal to fight back. They had no idea who I really was. After I found everything, I spent the next few days in a quiet kind of shock. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't say a word. Instead, I began to collect the pieces of the life they thought I was too quiet to notice, too invisible to care. They were wrong. Celeste and Jasper weren't just having an affair. They had built an entire web of lies, one that involved not just betrayal, but a level of cruelty I hadn't anticipated. It wasn't just about the affair itself, it was about how they treated me like a fool, how they assumed I would keep playing my role, the quiet one, the dependable one, the one who always cleaned up after everyone else. But this time, I wasn't cleaning up their mess, I was planning my revenge. I didn't need to lash out. I didn't need to shout or scream. That's what they expected, what they were waiting for. Instead, I stayed calm. I stayed invisible. I gathered evidence, made my moves, and prepared. They would never see it coming. The first thing I did was make sure I had leverage. I saved everything, every text, every photo, every email. I even got screenshots of Celeste's cryptic Instagram stories. Her half-hidden smiles, the ones I'd dismissed before, now had meaning. The hotel rooms, the intimate selfies, nothing was an accident. This wasn't a mistake. This was deliberate. But there was more. I knew what I had to do next. I needed a stage. I needed an audience. It was a week before Celeste's baby shower. My parents had already rented a venue, a community hall, bright and full of light, perfect for a celebration, or, in my case, the perfect setting for a reckoning. I called the venue manager and asked about the projector. "Oh, yes," she said. "We have a great projector and a big screen. It's perfect for your presentation." My presentation? I couldn't help the small smile that tugged at my lips. The irony wasn't lost on me. They thought I was just organizing a party, but in reality, I was about to lay their lies bare in front of everyone. I spent the next few days crafting my digital portfolio of betrayal. I compiled everything: photos, texts, emails, the hotel reservations, and even the Instagram posts. I created a PowerPoint presentation, with the first few slides looking harmless, baby-themed graphics. Sweet congratulations. Then, the fourth slide would hit, a screenshot of a text between Jasper and Celeste. Then came the photos, the intimate moments they thought they could hide. But I needed more than just the files. I needed protection. I saved the presentation to a USB, backed it up on another, and uploaded a copy to a cloud drive. I sent a copy to my lawyer, just in case anything went wrong, in case they tried to stop me. I also scheduled a timed email to myself. No matter what happened, the truth would come out. I didn't sleep much that week, not because I was nervous, but because I was focused, planning, organizing. I knew every detail. The layout of the room, the seating arrangements, when the speeches would happen. I even timed how long it took the screen to come down. Everything was in place. The day of the shower arrived. The sky was clear, rare for Seattle, but the weather didn't matter. I arrived at the venue early, carrying trays of food and bundles of decorations. My smile as practiced as ever. The moment I stepped inside, I felt that familiar weight on my shoulders, the weight of the role I had always played. The quiet one, the one who did the work but was never noticed. But this time they would notice. Guests trickled in, cousins, co-workers, old neighbors. They smiled at me, said how sweet it was that I'd helped put this together. Some even patted my shoulder and said I was amazing for doing so much. Despite everything, they didn't know what everything was yet, but they would. Celeste arrived fashionably late, wearing a blush pink dress that hugged her bump, her hair curled like she had just stepped out of a salon commercial. Nate walked beside her, polite but distant. I could see it in his eyes. Something wasn't right. He didn't know what yet, but he could feel it. Jasper came 10 minutes later, conveniently avoiding the setup. He gave me a sheepish smile and a shrug like we were in on a joke together. I returned it with one of my own, but not the joke he thought. The decorations were perfect. Pink and gold streamers curled from the ceiling. Cupcakes with tiny baby booties lined the dessert table. Personalized napkins read, "Welcome Baby Vale." No one suspected a thing. The speeches began after the food. My mom went first, her voice trembling with joy. "Celeste, you've always been a light in our lives," she said. Watching you become a mother is the greatest gift. Celeste dabbed at her eyes delicately. She loved being adored. Then it was my turn. I stood up, smiling at the crowd. "Thank you all for coming," I said, "and I have a surprise presentation, a little something to show how much we all love Celeste." People clapped politely, assuming it was just another heartfelt speech. The lights dimmed, and I clicked to the first slide. A sweet photo of Celeste and Nate from a beach trip. Smiles. Warmth, the safe beginning. Slide 2. A screenshot of a text. "Can't wait to see you again. Last night was amazing." Sent from Jasper's number to Celeste's. A few guests chuckled awkwardly, thinking it was some inside joke. Slide 3. A photo of Celeste in a bathrobe sitting on a hotel bed, grinning up at the camera, Jasper's hand visible on her shoulder. Gasps, silence. Slide 4. A time-stamped hotel reservation confirmation, Jasper's name. Same weekend Celeste had posted about escaping the chaos. Whispers began to ripple through the room. Slide 5. A screen recording of their text exchange. "Celeste, do you think Nate will notice?" Jasper asked. "Only if you name the baby after me," Celeste replied. "Is this real?" someone asked from the back of the room. I let the final slide hang. A blurry but clear clip of Jasper and Celeste in a hotel room, laughing. Her voice, "Nate's so clueless." Then, the projector went dark, the room was still. The silence was suffocating. Nate stood up so fast his chair clattered backward. "What the hell is this?" he demanded, his voice cracking. Celeste was ghostly pale. Her mouth moved, but no sound came out. Jasper stared at the floor, sweating. I stepped forward, microphone in hand. "Surprise, Celeste. I figured if you're going to throw a party, the truth should be invited, too." Gasps turned into shouts. Nate turned to Celeste, trembling. "Is it true you slept with him?" She didn't answer. That was answer enough. My mother rushed forward, pleading, "Bella, please, this isn't the time." I snapped, "It's the perfect time. You knew, didn't you? You covered for them." My father opened his mouth, but I didn't give him the chance. "Save it. You all made your choices. So did I." Someone was crying, maybe Celeste, maybe my mom, but it didn't matter. Jasper tried to approach me, his voice faltering. Can we talk?" I looked at him like he was a stranger. "Talk? You had months to talk. Now you can crawl." I unplugged the USB, handed the mic to the stunned MC, and walked out through a sea of stunned silence and recording phones. I didn't answer my phone for 3 days. Not when my mom called 14 times. Not when Jasper sent me a pathetic text that read, "We need to talk. You blew this out of proportion." Not even when Celeste left me a voicemail, sobbing so hard I could barely make out her words. I turned it all off. Everything. I didn't want to hear their excuses. I didn't need to. Instead, I sat in my apartment, quiet, clean, finally mine. I lit a candle, poured a glass of wine, and watched the sunlight crawl across the floor, like nothing in the world had happened. But something had, everything had, and now, for the first time in my life, I wasn't standing in anyone's shadow, I was standing in the light. I wasn't just a fixer, a bystander, a doormat. I was someone they had underestimated. I was someone they would never forget. The day after the baby shower, the fallout began. I was no longer the invisible daughter. My phone buzzed nonstop. The video clips from the shower started circulating. My cousin's live stream had caught every gasp, every accusation, every crack in Celeste's carefully constructed world. People who had once adored her were now torn between pity and outrage. Nate filed for divorce the very next day. According to a mutual friend, he packed her bags and left them on the porch, blocking her on everything. Celeste didn't even get a chance to explain, not that there was anything left to explain. I hadn't expected that, not so quickly, but the damage was done. The truth had been revealed. Jasper, he disappeared from social media completely. I heard from a mutual acquaintance that he moved back in with his brother. Coward. I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for him, not after what he did, not after what they all did. But the most unexpected call came from Miranda, Celeste's best friend. We'd never been close, but I always thought she was decent. Her voice was shaking when she called. Bella, I think Celeste slept with my husband too. I didn't even blink. Check his phone, I said calmly. She did, and she found everything. The same sick texts, the same photos, the same jokes, and even worse, a baby onesie photo. The same one Celeste had sent Jasper. Only this time. It was from Miranda's husband. The realization hit Miranda hard. She kicked him out that night and filed for divorce the next morning. The lies, the betrayal, the web of deception, they were unraveling faster than anyone could stop. And Celeste, the world she had built, the perfect little life she had worked so hard to maintain, was collapsing around her. Her empire of lies was crumbling, and she had no idea how to put the pieces back together. As for my parents, they tried to recover. They told their friends it was all a misunderstanding, a mistake. But the community had seen too much. People whispered. Some pulled away. Others confronted them directly. How could you let that happen, they were asked. And they didn't have an answer. They had lost more than just face. They had lost the image they'd worked so hard to polish. They were no longer the perfect family. They were just like everyone else, flawed, human, and I wasn't going to save them anymore. I was done. 2 weeks after the baby shower, I finalized my divorce from Jasper. No drama, no drawn-out fights, just clean signatures. And goodbye. I didn't need closure. I didn't need him to apologize. I just needed him out of my life, out of my head, and out of my heart. I threw away every last photo, every souvenir from the lie we'd lived. I repainted the bedroom. I bought new sheets. I replaced the mug he used every morning with a cactus. It felt symbolic, sharp, unkillable. Celeste, last I heard, she was staying with our parents, broke, disgraced, and more alone than she'd ever been. I didn't feel sorry for her, for the first time in my life. I wasn't standing in her shadow. I was standing in the light. I didn't need anyone's approval anymore, not my parents', not Celeste's, not even Jasper's. I had rebuilt my life this time. It was mine, and no one could take that away. A month later, my mother called. Her voice was tentative. Bella, I just wanted to check in, see how you're doing. I know things have been hard. I didn't say anything at first. The anger, the hurt, it was still there, simmering beneath the surface, but I had changed. I wasn't the same person I had been when I walked into that baby shower, holding trays of cupcakes and balloons. I'm doing fine, Mom, I said. My voice was calm, controlled, better than I've ever been. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Bella, I'm sorry for everything. I didn't know. I didn't want to see it. You didn't want to see it, or you didn't care to see it, I asked, the question cutting through the silence like a knife. I didn't care, she whispered, but I do now. I know I've failed you, and I don't want to lose you. I didn't know how to respond. I wanted to say that it was too late, that I couldn't forgive her for what she had allowed to happen, but that wasn't the truth. The truth was, I had already forgiven her, not because she deserved it, but because I had to forgive for myself. I'm not sure what happens next, Mom, I said quietly, but I'm not going to keep hiding anymore. I'm done being the family secret. I'm done being the one who gets ignored. You've seen who I am now, and this is who I'm going to be moving forward. She didn't argue. Instead, she simply said, I'm proud of you, Bella. And for the first time in my life, I didn't need anyone else to tell me that.